Izuku Midoriya and Class 1A have arrived at the Provisional Hero Licensing exam. When they do arrive, they begin to see that a ton of people are staring at them, acting friendly, but quickly they pick up on the idea that they are not so friendly. Obviously, they want something from them, and obviously, it would all come down to making sure that they target Class 1A. During the first event, that is exactly what happens. The idea is to basically tag different people with their odd, little dodgeballs, you could say. And during this sequence, Class 1A would be targeted heavily. But the only problem is, they miscalculated on some of the people that were there, not knowing exactly what quirks they all had. They thought Izuku's quirk was extremely limited, extremely speed-based. But Izuku didn't show much during the sports festival, and he would show all of them quickly that it was a large miscalculation. A large miscalculation to take him lightly and also his class. The development of his class was far beyond what most people would even think, and let's just say, a lot of people would drop almost instantaneously. Izuku, Melissa, and Bakugo would almost pass off the rip because all of the people would just come soaring to them. Izuku would basically head off into the waiting room, hoping that the rest of his class would follow suit. But we'll have to find out what happens in the next event, and let's say the more serious event known as the rescue event version of the Provisional Hero Licensing exam, right in this episode, in the finale of What If Deku had an RPG leveling quirk. Yo, what is good, everybody? It's your boy Golden Falls, Golden What If, whatever you want to call me, and I'm back. Yeah, I'm back, and we're going to be doing the finale of this What If. I don't know what else to tell you. I'm going to commit to basically finishing this the rest of this What If here. We still have obviously the rest of the Provisional Hero Licensing exam, but I'll be honest, not much is gonna change. I feel like even you guys can see that pretty easily. And then we have obviously the overhaul arc, and then we have the Class 1A versus Class 1B, which that won't be much of a difference either. But nonetheless, I'm not going to waste much more of your time, and let's just get right into the Provisional Hero Licensing exam. Let's get it. He begins to wait for the rest of his class to finish up, watching in the monitors to see how his class is currently doing. Eventually seeing that a bunch of them would slowly but surely pass. Aizawa would be watching this, and as expected, isn't surprised of how developed his students are. Yes, there are a bunch of first-year students, but nonetheless, they're extremely impressive. After a ton of struggle, you could say, finally the event is completely finished, and now it's time for the next event, known as the rescue portion of the event. You're going to have to basically save people and help anybody out as best as possible, and basically this is perfect for Izuku. At the end of the day, Izuku has a ton of tangible things that he can use. He's basically has a ton of attributes that he can use as well, and that's exactly what he's going to be doing. He's going to be using a ton of these attributes to his advantage. In terms of basically helping set up a giant campsite, he can easily, or like a recovery site, he can easily do that with Momo Yaoyorozu. Doing that would get him extra points right off the bat. On top of that, he's extremely smart in terms of rescue training. His intelligence has been off the charts recently, especially with how much he's been learning and how much his stats are affected by his learning. So every little aspect of it, he knows the ins and outs of making sure that they have safe evacuation and all of the above. On top of that, we all know his physical strength, all know how strong he could be, and that would be blatantly shown right when, a ton of villains would come. Sirens begin to blare, and Gang Orca and a ton of villains behind him begin to soar in. Immediately, Izuku begins to kind of tell everybody that they have to get everybody out of there first, and allow the two heavy hitters for now to fend off on their own. Todoroki and also Inasa would hold the lines for now. Izuku would then start slowly walking and heading over to the battlefield with Melissa as well, and their fight would truly begin. Izuku immediately just head-to-head conflicts with Gang Orca, making a small bubble around both of them. he tells Inasa and Todoroki to step it up and actually work together. Just as he does this though, flames and the wind begin to clash with each other, and it begins to make some sort of vortex. A vortex around both Izuku and Gang Orca, and it begins to strip Gang Orca of his water slowly but surely. Izuku refusing to allow the bubble to dissipate, he traps Gang Orca inside this odd bubble alone, forcing him to stay exactly where he is. Izuku holds him still while this vortex swarms him. Gang Orca tries to get the water, basically this water, and rehydrate himself, but in that bubble, Izuku would immediately attack this water jug and get rid of any water he can possibly use, and this basically puts Gang Orca out of commission all the way until the sirens go off and the speaker comes back on saying that the exam is now officially over. Izuku is happy to see this, and frankly, everybody kind of got off scotch easy. Melissa didn't even have to do much. That little technique was basically just a plan number one. Frankly, Izuku had full expectations that Gang Orca would break out, and then him and Melissa would basically take up on the hand-to-hand combat side of things. But luckily, it didn't even come to that. And everything worked out for the best. So everybody begins to head out and wait on their results. Eventually, those results would roll in, and Izuku, Melissa, and many others would pass. Unfortunately, Bakugo, Todoroki, and Inasa wouldn't because of their earlier conflicts. Of course, Bakugo being Bakugo, he probably lashed out at some fake civilian, and obviously Inasa and Todoroki were having their little debacle. But nonetheless, Izuku got what he wanted, and Melissa did as well, and now they're ready to finally start work studies. And this would basically be explained by the one and only Big Three. Mirio, Nejire, and Tamaki would explain it to everybody, but it would end up just being a Mirio wants to fight everybody type of deal. Eventually, this fight would lead to Izuku, Melissa, and basically anybody else trying to fend off Mirio, but frankly, Mirio's style of fighting maybe not as strong as Izuku in pure power, but flat out is unpredictable, at least at that moment. Izuku had a ton of struggle and trouble trying to fight him, but maybe if they tried to fight in the future, Izuku would have the upper hand. Maybe there's some sort of way for him to slow down Mirio, but at this moment, Izuku doesn't have an answer for that, but luckily he's not going to have to fight Mirio in some sort of villain battle, so that's nothing to worry about. After some time would pass, All Might himself would actually approach Izuku and Melissa, asking if they would both, well, go and try to join a work study of someone he knows very well by the name of Sir Night-Eye, in which both of them are excited at the idea. But of course, it won't be that simple. Of course, Night-Eye would make it extremely hard on them, and Mirio would kind of tell them this as well. And he brings up the idea that maybe he should just have both of them fight and then go down to that. But Izuku would disagree with this idea, saying that he could just go to a different work study. It doesn't matter that much to him. He just wants to work with somebody that is extremely close to All Might himself. And if that's that big of a problem, and if he feels that adding two sidekicks or two more sidekicks is that big of a trouble, he could just go take up on somebody else's offer. Obviously, Izuku would have a ton of offers. Melissa would have a good amount as well, but Izuku is known now to be extremely powerful and extremely impressive. They also know him from his past as well, so there's a ton of work studies out there, but just as he says this, Sir Night-Eye accepts them both. He kind of slightly gives us a weird smirk and tells them that that's kind of the answer that he wanted. He expected the answer to be an unselfish one. Izuku willing to give up the spotlight to someone else and not getting overheaded by, some other outside source. Just because he's big and popular, or at least somewhat popular compared to everybody else, doesn't mean that he gets a free ride and a full gimme no matter what, even with Night-Eye himself. Izuku was kind of shocked to hear this and didn't even think about it that way. Didn't even think about it in a way of maybe he should just be as humble as possible. This is just Izuku in general. He's never been the cocky type, and he always wants to put people in the situation or a better situation to basically rise to their own occasion. But with that said, everything would kind of get split. Mirio would go with Melissa, and Izuku would actually go on patrols with Bubble Girl. Everything would kind of be separated away from each other, and they're a little bit disappointed because Izuku would like to go on patrols with Melissa, and their chemistry is pretty good in terms of their fighting. But obviously Night Eye brings up the fact that of course their chemistry might be good, but he does need to get good chemistry with other people. Same thing with Mirio. So of course they're going to be switching off and on, and Izuku and Mirio would be working together at some point. But that some point would actually not eventually come, because on one of the first patrols that Mirio and Melissa go on, they come across a young girl by the name of Eri. Izuku, not knowing anything about this, not knowing about anything that's happening, would eventually get called in after Bubble Girls and his patrol, and it was kind of a stale patrol. Nothing really happened, but he got some good insight at what it means to be a sidekick for someone like Sir Night Eye. When they arrive back, they're immediately informed of what's going on, and that a meeting will ensue very soon. And when that meeting occurs, a ton of other heroes would join as well. It's actually Overhaul. Someone they've been searching for a long time. The leader of the Shiahazaikai has now been found. Now they need to put their own best foot forward to try and find this person, locate their location, and execute exactly what they need to do. And that is what's going to happen in the next couple days. After those couple days pass, they wake up early in the morning and they all meet up ready for a fight. They all are outside of the supposed Shiahazaikai base, and the invasion of that place would then begin. But while they're waiting for basically the police officer to read them their rights, Izuku realizes that Melissa seems kind of out of it. He asks if she's okay, and of course she kind of blows this off, saying that she's completely fine, but Izuku knows. He tells her that they're going to get that little girl now. They're going to save her now. So whatever happened back then, it doesn't matter. That they'll figure it out and they're going to save her and everybody's going to be safe. Izuku confidently says this and gets ready himself as his aura begins to flare up slightly, and he's basically ready for an actual fight. This will be his first villain encounter. Well, actual villain encounter that's legal technically. But once those rights are read off, a giant monster-like person begins charging out of the area. Luckily, Izuku and a bunch of others can get through that area, and they would try their best to find Overhaul himself. And off the rip, Mirio says that he'll go ahead and try to find Overhaul, and Izuku would try his best to actually keep up with Mirio with Melissa as well. After a long time would pass, they'd eventually spot Overhaul in a hallway. Coming across Overhaul, Izuku would tell them that they need to do a proper plan. If they can capture Overhaul and keep him in stasis, everything will go smoothly. So Mirio, immediately dashing toward Overhaul, pins him to the ground and throws him into a different room, crashing through another wall. Izuku would try to set up the same thing he did to Gang Orca. Trap him in this energy bubble and not allow him to leave. Izuku trapping both him and Overhaul in that bubble and eventually getting out. He's holding him still and not allowing Overhaul to move at all. He tries his best to puncture the energy bubble with spikes, ground spikes, anything he can possibly think of, but he can't even get anything to happen. Nothing is working. And of course, Izuku makes sure that he constricts the bubble as much as possible, using his mana and his magic that are extremely progressed by this point. Izuku is able to keep Overhaul exactly where he is. Mirio and Melissa would approach the bubble, getting ready to finish the job, knock him out, and then they'll take him out relatively easily with some cuffs. But just as they're about to do this, a bullet goes flying toward Mirio. About to connect with Mirio, he phases through the bullets. But as he does this, he looks to his left to see Melissa right in the way. Izuku, seeing the bullets, he has to make a decision. Does he let go of the bubble? Does he let Melissa get hit and keep the bubble up? What's going to happen? He's heard rumors though that this bullet could mean dequarking somebody, could get rid of their quirk entirely. Is he going to take that chance? So he decides to do neither. He's not going to let Melissa get hit, and he's not going to let go of the bubble. Using a magic technique that he now knows as a warrior mage, he switches places with Melissa. Holding onto the bubble during this process, he touches the bubble as well, gripping onto it, as basically that was his point of teleportation, close enough to Melissa that he can transfer energy back and forth, teleporting her away from the bubble as the bullet lands right in his shoulder. Mirio takes the opportunity to immediately cuff Overhaul, and luckily was able to get out of the situation, or at least in terms of Overhaul's powers, and Melissa knocks out the guy that just shot the bullets, but Izuku realizes that the bubble begins to fade. And all his powers begin to go. He looks at his arm and nothing is showing up. He can't activate his HUD menu. Nothing is working. Izuku seems to be gone. His quirk is gone. He doesn't know what's happening. He feels strong to a certain extent, but there is no HUD menu. There is no alteration that he can feel. He tries to activate any mana or any energy he possibly could. Nothing is working. But it's odd. He walks up to the nearby wall and he punches it, and it feels like he's still pretty strong, but he doesn't. Maybe it has something to do with just having those passive bonuses already, and those never go away, making it so Izuku is quirkless. There's a lot of things that went through his head during this decision, so fast in fact that he was able to figure it out while a bullet was traveling through the air. But nonetheless, he wasn't going to let Melissa become quirkless again, and he knows how important One for All is, and he didn't want that just being erased, poofed off into existence. But nonetheless, it was a decision he'll have to live with now. They take Overhaul away, capture him, and capture all the villains, and eventually they take Eri to the hospital. Izuku would be in the hospital as well, but his injuries weren't insane. Of course, he has a bit of a bullet wound, but other than that, it was nothing too impactful, well, except for losing his quirk. And obviously, Eri would know about this. Eri would know that his quirk would be lost because she knows what that bullet does. Eri is extremely sad, especially after seeing a young hero save another person from getting their quirk erased. And Izuku doesn't feel bad about this at all. He thinks that it's just something that happens in the line of work. He's always been this way. He's always thought this way. He's not going to lose his mind over the idea that he got shot by a quirk erasing bullet. He still has his intelligence. He still has a lot to work with. And maybe, just maybe, it's time to try and do something else. Aizawa, though, would make it abundantly clear that he didn't want Izuku leaving Class 1A. He's still a hero, nonetheless, and he can do far more than what most can possibly believe. During the Class 1A versus Class 1B training session, Izuku would have a different job. He would actually be just someone for Class 1A to run by different plans with. Izuku is extremely good at making plans, as we've seen throughout the entire series, so that's what he would help them with. Eventually, they'd basically get almost every single win, and Class 1A would do a complete sweep through. It would be relatively easily. And Melissa would just straight up take the place of Izuku. Of course, they'd have their little bit of struggles, but Izuku's planning was practically flawless, and it was extremely easy for Class 1A to overwhelm them. This was kind of proof to Izuku, and obviously what Aizawa was trying to show him, that he's more than just his powers, more than just basically what he thought he was. Izuku is strong even without his quirk. He doesn't need to be on the battlefield to make, well, an impact. Izuku hearing this did make him feel a lot better, but at the end of the day, he would always want his quirk back. But eventually he would be given that opportunity. Aizawa tells him that if he wants his quirk back, that he needs to train somebody. And he's pretty good at that already, and Aizawa was his teacher, or is his teacher, and he's sure that he's learned a couple things from their training sessions, but it's time for him to train someone else. Izuku would enter the room and would see Eri. Eri is the person that Izuku's basically going to have to train, and once he's successful with that, then he would have quote-unquote earned his quirk back. Once he makes Eri into a proper hero, Izuku can be alongside her and all of his friends, Melissa, Bakugo, anybody else, and they can all be heroes together. But for now, and for a little while, Izuku will be quirkless, or at least known to be quirkless. How much will this affect him over time? Maybe a little bit. But once he gets his quirk back, his dreams of being on the front lines with Melissa and various other heroes that he looks up to will continue on. But that is a story for another day. And this is the end of What If Deku had an RPG leveling quirk. If you enjoyed, make sure to leave a like, a sub, and a comment down below. All that good stuff. And I'm not going to basically hold you guys here too long. I just want to say thanks for all the supports. I'm going to be broadening my horizons with animes. As you guys can see, I have I just posted my my newest Naruto What If, or not just, but a couple days ago. And you might be seeing a Naruto What If movie. I don't know why I have the urge to do it, but we'll see. Maybe you do, maybe you will, maybe you won't. But at the end of the day, I hope y'all have been enjoying my What Ifs, and I hope y'all have an amazing day. Later.
I don't wanna waste what's left.